Have you ever been a part of an extremely lopsided exchange where you gave up more than you received? Do you remember a time when someone seemingly gifted you an excess of something that you had paid very little for? What if you, an athlete, were one of the bargaining chips in either of the previous examples, being sent from one franchise to another in a deal you still don't understand? Then you may just hear your name in this episode. This is what you don't know about goofy trades. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
And today we're going to tell you multiple forgotten stories, or more specifically, forgotten trades in sports history. This happens all the time in sports, right? Pretty much every sport has trade negotiations and exchanges, player for player, or whatever it ends up being. And every once in a while, one comes across the bottom line and you're like, what in the world just happened, right? Like, is there any trades? We talked about previous trades in a previous episode with the Chris Webber exchange for Penny Hardaway and all that stuff. You loved it. Is that become like your favorite trade saga of all time now?
Yeah, I think that one is incredible because of how many branches it has, and because Chris Webber gets traded for himself, and like other people get traded for themselves, and it just gets real goofy. But I don't know, for sheer goofiness on the bottom line, I think any NFL trade goes, because like you're used, like in the NBA, it's like this guy for that guy. It's like, okay, it's a star for like two role players, or a star for a first round pick. And in the NFL, it's like, here's a all pro and we get a fourth round pick and next year's seventh. And it's like, what? How does this make, like, how does that add up? Like, how does the production add up to make this work? So for me, anytime I see an NFL trade, I'm like, that one looks stupid. But it is what it is for that league, though. But yeah, we've got some doozies on here today.
Yeah, in NFL trades, speaking of that specifically, in NFL trades, you never really seem, it seems to always be the bad ones, at least always seem to be player for pick. But it's like former all pro for fifth round pick, like classic New England Patriots, Bill Belichick kind of stuff. I think you always wonder, how did they do that? Like, why are they willing to take that? I don't know. I'll never understand most of them, but it's fine.
For me, the one that was the most disappointing was Washington trading up like 2 spots to get Robert Griffin, and had to trade several picks to do that. And it was really fun for that one season. And then it turned out really awful as the Rams continued to pick like productive, useful players, and it was always the same position that Washington would need a productive, useful player. And it's like, you know what? This would have worked out so much better on the other hand. But anyway,
stop taking our players. So Matt and I have made lists of trades you may have never heard of, trades you may have forgotten about. Most of the ones on my list, I don't remember, or because they happened a long time ago, or they happened in a lower league, and so it didn't make the bottom line on ESPN. But we don't know each other's lists, so we're going to go back and forth, and we're going to tell you some of our favorite goofy trades in sports history that we could find, at least documented. You know, there's some that happened way down in the lower leagues of minor league sports, or not even professional sports at all, but just there's some funny ones out there. So I'm going to go first because I can. And I'm going to start. I'm going to start with an NFL trade because we just talked about that. And the one I'm going to mention first is Ricky Williams coming out of college as the leading rusher, as the Heisman winner, I believe, that his last season in college. The New Orleans Saints ended up picking him 5th overall in the 1999 draft. Do you remember what they had to trade to move up just to the number 5 to pick him?
I remember Mike Ditka wearing dreads and being very proud of himself. So I feel like it was a whole lot.
I read that it was the entire draft.
Yeah.
Every pick the New Orleans Saints had in the 1999 draft, they gave up to move up to number 5 to take Ricky Williams. Now, he only played there for 3 seasons, and then he went to Miami and actually had a career. But could you imagine, like, that is one of the dumbest things. It has to be one of the dumbest drafts in sports history, because imagine Drew Brees showed up and like kind of saved the day, right? But they were like already wearing paper bags on their heads when this happened. And now you've just given up. I don't know how many picks they had. I didn't get that far. I don't know how many picks they gave up exactly, but it was every single one they had in the 99 draft, apparently, just to move up to number 5.
Yeah, and that's it's one of those things where you feel bad because in the moment it had to be like, I know people questioned it in the moment, but at the same time, it's the all-time leading rusher in college in a time where people ran the ball a whole bunch of times, right? So he's got a lot of yards. That's impressive. But it's like nobody saw the fact that running backs weren't going to be that important coming. And it wasn't just him too. Like Ron Dane, I think, broke his record a few years later. And then, like, what did he do for the Giants? Not a whole lot. So it just normally you see that with quarterbacks, not running backs. All right, I've got one that isn't as much bad as it is a weird situation. I've got a couple that are in this category. Here's my first one, though. So, all the way back on May 30th of 1922, so way, way back, this is how far back it was. The Cubs and Cardinals were playing a Decoration Day doubleheader. We now know that as Memorial Day. That's how far away it was. They were playing a split doubleheader, which isn't, or what became not the norm, but it was something that happened. Of course, now we do this all the time, right? Day-night doubleheaders. You play a game, clear the stadium, play another game. That's how this was. Between the games, Cubs manager Bill Killefer and Cardinals manager Branch Rickey. And it's that Branch Rickey. I didn't even know he was a manager before he worked with the Dodgers and changed the way minor league baseball works, signed Jackie Robinson. That's where everybody knows from. But he was a manager for the Cardinals. They went to lunch together between games, and they got to talking about their teams. The Cubs realized they weren't very good. Cardinals realized they were pretty good, needed a quick, speedy, like guy that could handle the bat to hit in front of Rogers Hornsby. And they were like, hey, why don't we just look? All right, hear me out. You guys get this really quick dude. We've got, he steals double-digit bases all the times, Max Flack from the Cubs. And the Cardinals were like, all right, well, we got this dude, Cliff Heathcote. He's pretty good. He actually, his first few years was a terrible fielder. He had one of those situations where the ball bounces off the top of your head. They called him Rubberneck for the whole situation.
Oh, no.
And but he'd gotten better. He'd hit well. He was young. He was still just 24 years old. And so they make the deal at lunch. In the first game of the doubleheader, Max Flack had hit leadoff for the Cubs. Heathcote had hit 5th for the Cardinals. When they get back to the ballpark, they find out that they have been traded for each other. And Max Flack's going to lead off the game now for the Cardinals. They did not have extra uniforms because it's a doubleheader. Who's going to get here in the middle of a doubleheader? So there's no extra uniforms. The good news is that nobody put names on the back of jerseys until much later, a couple of decades after this. So they literally, sometimes you hear they were traded for each other, or this guy's to fill this guy's uniform. This is literally what happened. They just took the uniforms, handed them. They filled each other's clothes for the second game of the doubleheader. Heathcote, to his credit, went 2 for 4 in game 2, and the Cubs, kind of on the same line as what you were saying, the Cubs win that trade. The Cardinals did have some success that year, but then the Cubs won out heavily. Heathcote was pretty good over the course of the next few years, and they went to a World Series in 1929. Flack retired 3 years later. So there you go. There you go. Two guys who went to lunch, came back, and they were on the other team.
Luckily, we know that the Cubs didn't win a World Series for quite some time after this, because how would you feel if you were the guy who was like on an up-and-coming team and that team was one piece away and you were traded for that guy?
Oh, man.
And then they win without you. Like, that happens probably pretty regularly if we sat down and thought of some scenarios where a player goes for another player and like a straight up exchange, and then that's all that team needed. You're like, man, is he that much? Like, you're questioning your entire psyche and your entire reason for being an athlete when that one guy is that much better than you, or seemingly so anyway. But that's pretty good. It's wearing 2 different jerseys in the same day. That
two jerseys in the same day.
All right, that's a good one. I have an interesting soccer one. So
not a lot of soccer trades. I like this.
So in the North American Soccer League, a gentleman by the name of Walter Restrepo. Now this happened like in this century. Okay, he was playing for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers in the NASL. The Strikers decided to send him to the San Antonio Scorpions, and on paper, their compensation was, quote, a transfer fee. Okay. That seems innocent, right? Well, really good journalism eventually uncovered that, quote, a transfer fee actually meant hotel rooms and transportation. By that, I mean the Fort Lauderdale Strikers needed to be able to pay for hotel rooms for their team and transportation to and from the games that were played in San Antonio that season. And so when Restrepo was sent from Fort Lauderdale to San Antonio agreed to basically pay for their lodging and their transportation for the games that Fort Lauderdale played that season in San Antonio.
I mean, I guess that's cutting out the middleman, right? So instead of just giving them a transfer fee and letting them figure out what to do with it, they were just like, it's the cousin of the player to be named later. This is the cash to be spent later.
Mm-hmm. Yep, but they called it a transfer fee, and there was a quote from the person from Fort Lauderdale, I believe, who basically said, or no, it was for the San Antonio Scorpions, who basically said, "Thanks so much to blah blah, the manager of this hotel in San Antonio, and blah blah from blank limo service for all of their assistance. We could not have done this deal without their help." And everybody's like, hold up, you said a transfer fee, and the guy from San Antonio goes back and he's like, yeah, I shouldn't have said it that way, but that's what I got.
I mean, it was a transfer fee. It was just one that was executed in a strange way.
Very, very strange way. But, like in lower leagues, sometimes it can be difficult to make payroll and travel to play. Like, I can't imagine some of the accommodations that some of these lower level sports teams have to stay in, and the transportation situations to and from games. Like, they're not making a ton of money. And so something like this is one of those situations where, you know what, we need to make payroll, or we need to be able to like have a hotel room in your city when we come. Help us out here.
All right. My second one is along the same lines as my first, but it is a weirder situation, if you can imagine that. than the first. So the first one we had guys traded in between games. So check this out. On August 4th, 1982, the Mets had, in typical Mets fashion, I've got a brother that's going to enjoy that comment, had fallen to 5th place in the National League East. That's last place in today's terms, but there were more teams because there are only 2 divisions per league. There were 13 and a half games behind the leader, Philadelphia. So that's basically, you're not coming back from that unless there's a monumental collapse or a miracle, essentially. So they do what most baseball teams do. They look to sell some higher priced assets that maybe they're not going to keep around. And they had a player, Joel Youngblood III, who was on the 3rd year of a $300,000 contract. The Mets weren't entirely sure they were going to keep him or they wanted to keep him. So you trade a guy for something so he doesn't leave for nothing. The problem was on that morning, they were talking with the Montreal Expos about the trade, but they were having phone issues. And I couldn't find if it was like the Mets had an issue with the phones, the Expos, there was just an issue where they could not complete the deal. And so the Mets, because Youngblood at that point was an all-star the year before, was an above-average hitter most seasons, they were like, start him, play him. We'll take the risk on him getting hurt, but we don't have a deal, so start him, play him. It's fun. They were playing in Chicago, so they were playing the Cubs, Wrigley Field at that time in history, mostly day games at Wrigley Field. So a 1:00 start. He plays. He comes up in the 3rd inning. He hits a single that scored 2 runs and gave the Mets a 3-1 lead. Finally, the deal went through, and they came and got him out of the dugout. We see this in baseball all the time where a guy gets pulled in the middle of a game because he got traded. So, because it was a day game, he had this. This is a quote from Youngblood. He says, I made a plane reservation, went to the hotel to pack, realized I'd left my glove in the dugout, went back to the ballpark to get it, went to the airport, had dinner on the plane, took a cab to the ballpark. It was my idea to rush here. If I was a member of the Expos, I wanted to be here. He left the game in Chicago in the 3rd inning, and he arrived at Veterans Field in Philadelphia, where the Expos were playing the Phillies, in the 3rd inning. He sat on the bench, greeted his new teammates, and in the 7th inning, he replaced Jerry White in left field and came up on the opposite half of that inning and became the first, and to this day, only man to record hits for 2 different teams on the same day. Not only that, it was 2 different games, 2 different cities. And both, by the way, were off of Hall of Fame pitchers. Steve Carlton was throwing for the Phillies. Fergie Jenkins was throwing for the Chicago Cubs. So there you go. Joel Youngblood III making history in a weird trade.
How on earth? There's obviously a reason that's only happened one time, right? Like that. No, who else would rush to the next ballpark to immediately jump into the game with their new team?
Yeah.
And he would have been there earlier if he hadn't have forgot his glove.
He might have made the start if he hadn't had to go back to the park.
I can't imagine. That amount of dedication is impressive for one thing, but the fact that you can just dead stop in the middle of a game, pick up, taxi, plane, taxi, dugout, replace a guy in the middle of a game, and then hit for the second team, get a hit for the second team. It's what?
I think my favorite part of that story is that he booked things are so sophisticated now that you get traded and your team or the new team books the flight and there's an equipment guy that gets your stuff and they make sure it gets to the new place and everything's taken care of seamlessly. He took a cab. He had to go back. He booked the flight. He took care of his arrangements to make it work. There's no way it happens today where a guy gets traded at 1:00 and is at the 7:00 game.
I have another baseball one, except it's an independent league trade. This gentleman's name is Ken Cranble. He played for the Pacific Suns, which just sounds cool, in an independent league. They sent him to the Greenville Bluesmen. It was a team in the South, okay? Ken is from, I believe it was Texas. And so he was being sent home, basically. The Pacific Suns were in California. He was being sent back to an area where he was more familiar. And so when the Pacific Suns sent him to the Greenville Bluesmen, they sent him there for a player to be named later, like you mentioned earlier, some cash, and 10 pounds of Mississippi catfish. I am not making this up. The general manager for the Greenville Bluesmen, Mike Begley, said in a quote after the trade, quote, "Those people in California don't know what good fish is." And so he's in the trade for this player was a future player, some cash, and he also threw in 10 pounds of Mississippi catfish. In Ken's first outing with the Bluesmen, he was kind of upset to learn that he was traded for some fish. So in his first outing with the Bluesmen, he pitched a perfect game against the Armadillo Dillos. Probably another independent baseball team. He was quoted after that game saying, "I wanted to show the Suns they made a mistake. I was upset that I was traded for just some catfish, but I'm glad I'm here in Greenville now," end quote.
So some of these trades that are like this, I get completely, because it's the transfer fee for a hotel room and lodging, right? Or transportation. I get that. That's something the team's got to have to survive. They traded for 10 pounds of catfish. What are you doing with the 10 pounds? Is that the team meal? Are we catering dinner for the week with the catfish? Like, what's happening? What is that for?
So to correct my earlier statement, the quote, "Those people in California don't know what good fish is," it was by at the time, Pacific general manager Mike Begley, but he formerly worked in Greenville. And so I guess he missed.
He just wanted to catfish.
He may have just wanted some catfish from Mississippi, and wanted to show some of the people in California what a Mississippi catfish was and how good it was, if it's good at all. I'm assuming it's fine. And so he put it in the deal to send one of his players in exchange for him to receive this catfish. So
maybe as a side thing to earn some extra cash, they were going to have a catfish eating competition, right? How much catfish do you need for that? Just hitting a previous episode. How much catfish could you eat?
Competitive eating. But catfish, halftime of an independent league baseball game.
Disgusting. Man, you talk about, though, like playing the game for the love of the game and not having a lot of money involved. Those independent teams that's tough
They
stuff.
love them some sport, let me tell you.
All right. We are going to take a pause real quick because we're going to play America's favorite game show, Stump the Sykes. And lest anyone believe that we are kind of cheating and sharing answers and looking things up, I've got one that I am almost confident he's going to get wrong. And so are you, riding around in your cars or in your cubicles. We completely condone listening to this at work. Just make sure you're working. If your boss comes, tell him it's research. It's fine. But this time we're going to stump the Sykes, because I'm going to give you 10 questions, Blake, and I want you to I want you to tell me who the most traded player in the Big Four American sports, so that's Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL. Which player is the most traded out of those four leagues in history? And you get 10 questions to figure it out.
10 questions. All right. Baseball, basketball, football, hockey. Yeah?
Correct.
So I guess the easiest way to start, my first question would be, which league did they play in?
The National Basketball Association.
NBA. Okay. What college did this person play at? Do we know?
Interesting question. This person went to the University of California at Los Angeles.
UCLA.
He did.
Okay, so that's 2 questions. Played at UCLA.
That's 2 down. 2 down.
What year were they drafted?
They were drafted in the 2004 NBA draft. So their first year was 04-05.
04-05. 2004 NBA draft, played at UCLA. See, LeBron's draft was 03.
Yes.
Okay. What team drafted them in 2004?
He was drafted by the New York Knickerbockers. Oh, New York Knicks.
2004. New York Knicks. UCLA. What? Okay, let me think. I don't even know what I think that's 4.
That was 4, yeah.
That's 4?
Yeah.
How many teams did he play for?
He has played for 10 teams, but he's also played for 2 of those teams twice.
Okay. Is he still in the league?
This individual is still
Oh my God.
in
No
the
shot.
NBA.
17 seasons?
Yep.
17 seasons for 10 teams? Oh, Lord. I feel like I'm going to break my head on the table when when you tell me, because I can't come up with a name.
Yeah.
You
know this player, but I just don't think you're gonna. But we're gonna keep going. That was what, 5?
5 or 6. I feel like this is a valiant effort, at least.
Yeah, you're giving it a go.
What team does he currently play for?
I'll give you extra information because it's kind of fresh, but he currently plays for the Miami Heat. He was traded there on March 17th from the Portland Trailblazers.
From the Trailblazers to Miami. So he ended this past season with Miami.
Correct.
I bet somebody listening to this is yelling at me right now.
Oh yeah, there's some Heat diehard.
Somebody knows.
I know this. Come on.
Somebody knows this roster a lot better than I do. UCLA 2004, drafted by the Knicks. Plays for the Heat now. See, I don't know the Heat that well. What position does he play?
He is a swing man, so he's shooting guard, small forward. Listed officially as small forward.
Small forward. I don't know. Is that 7? 8?
I believe that was 7. This is very scientific, and
I'm trying so hard, my brain hurts. I can't think of any other way to narrow it down other than, yeah, I feel like I'm gonna feel really dumb here in a second. See, if you didn't tell me right now, I would think about this for hours until you told me. So we should probably just let it go.
I love that I finally found one.
What who else played with him at UCLA?
Oh,
do you have that?
Oh, okay.
I don't know who was on that team.
It doesn't matter. It's not gonna help. Okay. It's not gonna help at all. So he this was a bad UCLA team that went 7-11 in conference and 11-17 overall. I can safely tell you that you have heard of absolutely nobody on this roster. There are only 6 people with Wikipedia pages on the entire thing.
Jesus. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I got nothing.
All right, the man we are looking for is the one and the only Trevor Ariza.
He played at UCLA?
Played at UCLA. Who knew?
See?
But there it is.
Trevor Ariza.
I didn't know he played for all these teams. I knew him from LA and Houston. And Houston mostly.
The Rockets mostly. That would make it recently, yeah.
Yeah. He came out after his freshman year, so he was really young when he did it. When he came out. So he's
still got legs.
Yeah, he's not terribly old. Sure, you play more minutes that way, so sometimes you don't play as long. But yeah, from New York to Orlando to New Orleans to Washington to Houston, back to Washington to Portland to Houston again to Detroit to Oklahoma City and to Miami. 10 times he's been traded is the most in Big Four sports.
That is quite a trivia question.
Indeed.
That is a good one.
And I got him.
Bravo.
Finally.
I love it.
Just to prove to you we weren't goofing around here.
I truly don't know. I was not making that up. I was trying really hard. My head hurts now.
No spider tack for us. All right. I've been telling you some baseball trade stories, and I've got one here that is absolutely ridiculous. All right. So going into the 1960 baseball season, Indians general manager Frank Lane had created quite the reputation for being quick on the trade button. He essentially general managed the way people play franchise mode on a video game, just trading whomever, whenever, for whatever, and just seeing what happens. Going into that season, he had actually traded the reigning home run king Rocky Calavito for batting champion Harvey Quinn. Like he had just him and the Tigers general manager had traded the home run king for the batting champion and just did it. For why? Don't know. It didn't work out in either situation though. And he also had the kind of temperament that most people who are quick on the trade button have. They tend to blame the manager or the head coach, depending on the sport, for anything that goes wrong. Now, it's surely not their fault. It's surely not the fact that they're just putting all kinds of pieces together and nobody's got any chemistry with each other. Just to prove to you that he doesn't believe in chemistry. Going into August 10th of 1960, him and the Tigers general manager got together on the absolutely craziest trade you will ever hear. It was not a player for player. It wasn't a player for picks. It wasn't a player for money. It wasn't a player for catfish. Because it wasn't a player for anything. No. The Cleveland Indians traded manager Joe Gordon to the Tigers for their manager, Jimmy Dykes. This wasn't in the offseason, ladies and gentlemen. This was in the middle of the season. It's August 10th. They traded managers.
What?
They traded managers. The Indians were in 4th place. Tigers were in 6th place in the same division, by the way, and decided, what the heck? Let's just swap guys. Unsurprisingly, this didn't work in either situation.
Oh, no.
The new Indians manager, Jimmy Dykes, was fired after 1960, so he didn't make it past the season. Joe Gordon did make it to 1961, but he was fired that year. So,
but why?
Manager for manager.
Why? Like, what did they honestly think would happen? Like, were they gonna just? I mean, was it one of the situations where they just sat down together and they were like, you know what? My manager really sucks. You know what? Like, I'm going to fire him after the season. You know what? I had the same thought about my manager. We're not doing so hot either. You know what would be hilarious? Let's just swap them right now in the middle of the season. Let's just yours for mine and mine for yours, and then we'll fire them both. They were already going to get fired, right? They were already going to be jobless. Let's just make a fun out of it. You're playing with people's lives, man. Like, it's like, this isn't chess. So they treat it like chess a lot of times, but holy.
This was a situation. This is Facebook fan come to life. This is, we got to trade the whole team. Get rid of them all.
Get rid of everyone.
Except it was a person that actually had power that thought that was a great idea. If you look at their transaction history, like when he's general manager, it just goes off the rails. Like, there is no way that a normal human being made all of these deals. He just loved trading, I guess.
So, all right, I've got a funny one.
All right.
Tell me if you've heard this name before. Tom Bussy Martin.
Maybe.
He eventually played in the National Hockey League. Not immediately, though. Tom Bussy Martin was really good at hockey in college. Or, excuse me, really good at hockey in high school. And he was drafted after his senior year of high school, I believe. And so a team called the Seattle Breakers in minor league hockey, I believe, drafted him. And instead of going to play professional hockey, he decided to go to college. Well, they didn't like that. And so instead of holding on to a player who they could not use, were not going to be able to use for quite some time, they all sat around and said, you know what we could use, though? A team bus. That's right. The Seattle Breakers sent Tom Bussy Martin to the Victoria Cougars for a used bus. The Victoria Cougars had recently purchased an extra bus from the Spokane Flyers, who had just recently folded, another minor league hockey team. And so they had two of them. You know what? We don't need two buses. We'll give you a bus. We'll give you a mighty fine used bus if you give us the rights to this player who decided to get a college education instead of coming and playing straight into professional hockey. And he lived on with the nickname Tom Bussy Martin for the rest of his career.
I mean, I get it. You got to get something for him, but that's like every one of these is like catfish or discount hotel rooms or a used bus. Like, you're not even getting traded for. Oh man, what is your value? I'm worth a bus.
That's bad.
Although that one sounds good. I'm worth a bus. Buses are expensive.
Yeah, they probably did call. And this was in the early 80s, so I mean, if you need one, you need one, right?
All right. Here's one that is crazy out of context. So I'm going to give you the context last so you can enjoy the crazy.
Perfect.
We know that Dave Winfield is an all-time great. He is one of six athletes to ever be drafted by three different professional sports. He got drafted coming out of college, obviously, Major League Baseball. He was drafted by both the Atlanta Hawks of the NBA and the Utah Stars of the ABA. He had never played college basketball. They just drafted him. And he was picked by the Minnesota Vikings that year, too. So he's one of only six athletes ever in three sports, and three sports, and only one of three people to ever be drafted into four different leagues because he had the NBA and the ABA. He's a 12-time All-Star, a 7-time Gold Glove winner, 6-time Silver Slugger winner, and he's a Baseball Hall of Famer. But in 1994, Dave Winfield, at 42 years of age, was traded for dinner. Traded for dinner. Now, it doesn't say what kind of dinner, how much expense the dinner may have been, if it was, the top steakhouse in the world, or we're going to bring everybody into Mama to come, but just for dinner. Now, the context is that they were nearing the waiver trade deadline of August 31st in 1994. If you know baseball history, you know they weren't playing baseball in August of 1994. The players had struck. Nobody was really sure if they were coming back. Nobody was really sure if they were going to continue playing baseball. So the general managers were just having some fun. They were friends with each other. The Twins general manager, Andy MacPhail, and the Indians general manager were decent friends. The Twins general manager was friends with Dave Winfield. He wanted to see Winfield succeed, be on a winner one more time. The Twins weren't it. The Indians, if you know anything about their history, had never won anything ever. And this was when they were on the come up with Kenny Lofton and Manny Ramirez, and they looked like they were going to be good. They needed some veteran leadership. They talked about the trade. They toyed with it. They joked about it being for dinner, but it never actually got put in. They didn't actually trade Dave Winfield for dinner, unfortunately, because that would be funny.
That would be great.
They actually gave an interview to MLB.com where they like went out of their way to be like, we would never devalue Dave Winfield to say he was only worth dinner. That's not what we would do. We promise we weren't that stupid. And that seems to be true. Winfield apparently didn't get too angry about the press over it because he did sign with Cleveland for 1995 and played the regular season with them. But I do believe he was left off the playoff roster that year because he was 43 years old and on the back end of his career. So Hall of Famer for dinner. That beats independent leaguer for catfish. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Everybody. Imagine. Well, it depends. Like, where are you taking me? Right. Where are you taking me for dinner with the money you're getting? You know.
You taking me to Fuddruckers, or are you taking me to like, I don't know, Gordon Ramsay's
Ruth's Chris,
overpriced Ruth's Chris?
Give me a nice steak for my troubles, or are we gonna like hit a drive-through on the way home or something? I have another baseball one. All right, it's this gentleman's name is Johnny Binky Jones. This happened in the early 30s. I believe it was 1931. Joe Engel, who is quite the minor league showman, similar to Bill Veeck. Shout out to a previous episode that you should all go download right now. And he was also quite the minor league showman, apparently. And so Engel showed up in Chattanooga, and he had enough money to buy the Chattanooga Lookouts. Okay, this was a baseball team,
historic team. Yeah.
And so
still a Double-A team. Yeah.
And so he ends up showing up, purchasing this team with like probably cash he had in his pocket or something. And he eventually got around to trading one of his players, Johnny Binky Jones. Okay. What he received in return, all he asked for was a turkey, a 25-pound turkey. Now, if this is making you think of Thanksgiving, get on the train.
Is he alive? The turkey was alive, or does it have to be like a cooked? I mean, not a cooked, but like a you know, like a in the wrapper, like butterball turkey. Like, what are we talking? Like a feral turkey or
Binky Jones? I'm going to call him Binky because that's his sick name. Apparently, Binky Jones. He only played. He played with the Brooklyn Dodgers 6 years earlier. He showed up in Chattanooga, didn't play very well in the 1930 season. He wasn't hitting very well. And so Engel said, quote, "The turkey was having a better year." And so he sent Jones that offseason to the Charlotte Hornets baseball team.
Yep.
Shout out. And they were in the Class C Piedmont League at the time, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And all he asked for in return was a 25-pound turkey. He requested the bird in time for February 22nd so he could serve it to all the sports writers who were so hard on the team at the Southern Baseball Writers Association in the first meeting and that right before that season started. I can't tell whether someone brought him a live turkey and like he killed it and prepared it, or it was already like ready to be cooked. But yes. So contrary to Dave Winfield, who may or may not have been traded for food, this man actually got sent from Chattanooga to Charlotte
for food,
for a turkey.
If he was thinking on his toes, if he was the showman that he claimed to be, then it definitely should have been a live turkey, and like he should have took it to some kind of press gathering and just like let it parade around and then served it to him later. That would have been the chef's kiss on that. I'm gonna cheat and combine several into one quick hit real quick.
Bang, 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 bang.
The first one, So I've got a couple of not coaches for each other because that's still the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But a close second is coaches for picks. This happens, and like I knew all of these, but I never thought about all of these. So this has happened a whole bunch, but just two situations that I find are funny. John Gruden used to be the Oakland Raiders coach, now is the Las Vegas Raiders coach. He wanted out of Oakland, but he had a problem because he was still under contract to Oakland. And so he figured out a way to get, they didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign him at the end of his contract. Same kind of situation with a player. You just don't see this with a coach usually. And so the Raiders traded John Gruden to Tampa Bay for like more than you would get for a player. We started the episode talking about this. John Gruden went from Oakland to Tampa Bay for 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and $8 million. Now, maybe some of that money is the money they're using to give him this giant contract he's got now.
I was going to say they held on to that.
2 firsts. Tampa gave up 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and $8 million.
To be fair, though, he won a Super Bowl in Tampa. So, like, what did that bring the franchise in comparison? But
not only did he win a Super Bowl in Tampa, he beat the Raiders to win the Super Bowl in Tampa.
That's true.
Which is crazy. The second one of these situations that is wild to me. So Bill Parcells is like the 90s coach of that everybody looks up to, right? Bill Parcells had won, and he'd won with the Giants, and he was currently coaching the New England Patriots. And he wanted to become the coach of the New York Jets. He wanted to get back to New York. He just had another problem, and the same problem Gruden had. He had a year left on his contract, but he's Bill Parcells, so he's really smart. So he said, he came up with a great idea. He said, look, I'm just going to retire from I'm going to retire from the Patriots. They're going to hire Bill Belichick to be their coach over there, and I'm going to be a consultant for 1 year, and then I'll become the head coach. And he's ahead of his time because we see this happen, right? Look at any Alabama football game. What do you see? 25 dudes that don't get the name coach because you can't have but so many. They're consultants. Many of them happen to have show causes from the NCAA because they cheated. Technically a suspension for those who don't know. Butch Davis did this for Carolina when they had to fire him. He became a consultant for the Tampa Bay Bucks. That way Carolina had to pay him his buyout and he got paid to coach because it technically wasn't coaching. Anyway, the NFL said, nah, Fran, you cannot do this. Like, they squashed the situation. And so Parcells went to the Jets for a first, a second, a third, and a 4th round pick. 1, 2, 3, and 4 Parcells to the Jets. Not to be outdone, the aforementioned Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells, descendant. When it was his turn to be the head coach of the Jets after they got rid of Parcells, he took the job for a single day. I'd forgot about this, but I'm remembering it now. He took the job for a single day and then decided he wanted to go coach in New England. And so they traded him back to New England. And what did they get? A 1, a 4, and a 7. We got coaches going for more. Like if Aaron Rodgers were to get traded, they're talking about maybe it's not a 1st round pick.
1 pick, not even
Bill Parcells. Bill Parcells went for the first 4. John Gruden went for 2 firsts.
Get out of here.
This is incredible. The trading for managers and coaches things. But it works out. It seems to work out.
For almost all of those, well, besides the baseball, but like the 3 that you just mentioned,
yeah,
it did work out. And like all-time great for 1, Super Bowl champ, and now like richest coach in the league for 1, and then like one of the coaching goats for the 3rd. You know, like it's whatever. It worked. It worked on some level for all.
On some level, it's just funny to me that it was the Jets and the Patriots back and forth.
They just had a thing for each other there for a while. I don't know.
Just trading Parcells and Belichick as a package deal.
Yeah, but like they're in the same
back and forth.
Were they in the same division then too?
They were still in the same division.
Why?
Yeah.
Why? That'd be like that's like Aaron Rodgers going and playing for Chicago tomorrow. Like, why would you do that?
Like the Yankees trading a decent bullpen arm to the Red Sox and then getting beat by him 19 times a year. Oh wait, that did happen. To kind of wrap it up, I think the thing that would be the goofiest, the funniest, I think, is and this is coming out around the trade deadline for baseball, but I mean just any sport, mostly baseball for this though. It is possible to have a player play on both sides of a game, the same game, and I really want it to happen. It's happened, but nobody has actually participated, because in baseball you get rainouts that resume later, or you get protests that actually succeed and you start later. And so it's happened several times that a guy was on one roster for the start of the game, gets traded, and when they come back to play to finish out the game, it's 6 months later and he's on the other team, but nobody has played in the game. There are several players that like have their major league debut like 6 months before their actual debut, which is always funny. There's guys that have like home runs before they debuted officially. But nobody's played on both sides of a game. I'm waiting for that to happen. Somebody make it happen. If there's any general managers listening to this that we haven't upset, I need you to trade somebody.
Yeah, good luck.
Once you've got a protested game or a rain out, I need you to make this happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in a position to know any sort of like, oh yeah, this would be a great candidate to do something like that. But
doesn't matter, just do it.
Someone should do it. Maybe not in Major League Baseball, but maybe we find the Chattanooga Lookouts, and they would be game.
Hey, y'all are playing a 14-inning doubleheader. Can we just switch somebody? Just put them
just right in the middle.
put them in a different.
You can even tell them before the game starts, like, hey, this is going to go through. Play here first. Switch dugouts. Play there second.
Yes, I need that. I need it. I need a guy to play for both teams.
I need more of these stories. Like these are all. Most of these are somewhat old. But I guess there's a lot of rules in place now for trades, and like,
yeah,
it's more complicated than like, hey, let's sit down for lunch. I don't want this guy. I don't want that guy. Let's swap. Like that. Yeah. That's hardly ever going to happen.
They don't make them like they used to.
Okay, kids these days. I hate that argument, by the way. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of stories that I didn't know about or had forgotten about. So. And for the record at home, we both made lists and didn't know beforehand, and there were no duplicates. If you know of any ones that we didn't talk about, I'm sure there's some out there we didn't get to or didn't mention. Hit us up on social media. Follow us on social media. We love hearing your stories. We love hearing your ideas. We actually really enjoy doing this type of stuff. So, like if you want to make this a full-time job for us, by all means, get on it, people. And that's what you don't know or may have forgotten about goofy trades. As always, thanks for listening.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.
And then you come home wearing the other team's shirt, and that wife is like,
What's happening?
honey, what?
It feels like a Snickers commercial. You just hand it to him like, you're not you when you're hungry.
Better.